Oh, hello everybody. Welcome to another Wild Portishead live show. Oh my goodness me, Chris. It's chilly tonight, isn't it?
It's blooming freezing, isn't it? Yeah. Good evening, everybody.
Hello everybody.
We got a packed show, haven't we?
We've certainly got a packed show and we have a special guest tonight. We are joined this evening by the prospective Green Party candidate in the general election. So without further ado, we'll introduce our guest for tonight. And I will point out, we have sent out invites to all the election candidates. But Oscar Livesey Lodwick was the first one to respond. So hello, Oscar. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, hi guys. How you doing? No, pleasure to be here, and it should be a fairly easy thing to talk about. So all candidates hopefully will join after me. So fingers crossed.
We keep our fingers crossed. Yeah. Chris, you're the man with the questions, aren't you? So we'll let you lead on this one.
Well, let's just explain to everybody who's watching this that Jonathan and I are not journalists.
No,
this is not a hustings, and this is just a conversation, a friendly conversation. So the two questions, which I think I'll roll into one, Oscar, are basically. What do you think is special about the North Somerset natural environment? And should you be elected, this is the second point, should you be elected, what is it that you would do to secure that, protect it, enhance it, or whatever?
Yeah, of course. So I was explaining to you just before we got started that I moved to Nailsea when I was about 8 years old from London. So immediately there's a massive difference in your access to natural environments, natural areas, and as a school kid, I went to St. Francis Primary School in Nailsea. I can remember from the very first couple of weeks, months being there, how much we were interacting with the local woodland, the local coastline in Portishead and in Clevedon, and I want to start by saying I think that's something which maybe has been lost over the years, and something which is really sad in terms of educating young people about what's on our doorstep, from coastline to woodland, to fantastic cycle paths, fantastic walking paths, an absolute, a massive range of bird life. The opportunity to learn and teach is endless, and I think that's maybe not just something in North Somerset, but around the UK. We really, guys like yourselves, I know, and groups like the Wild Portishead Wildlife Group, or it's massively important that we're teaching young people what's out there, and that's something I'm really, really passionate about, because I think that at the moment we have a society which can be quite stuck indoors, and it's really sad. It's especially for me, because I moved back to North Somerset just last year.
Where did you originally live?
So I was in Lewisham in London, and I moved to Nailsea when I was 8 years old. So, but now, for example, going for a run, going for a cycle, pointing out stuff to your cousins or people who are new to the area, go here. It's fantastic. Like, we're just so lucky. Like, it's, I think we do forget sometimes how fortunate we are.
One of the things you're grabbing there is really fundamentally important. It's been, and it should have been higher up the national agenda, but that's the great detachment from nature.
Yeah.
And that is something which, I've been involved with nature conservation since I was that high. And that's something that we've constantly tried to get through by various means. And I've got to be honest that now I've reached the ripe age of 3.5 million years old. I think this is actually, Oscar, this is the worst time.
Yeah.
I go back 20 years. There was much more attachment to it. And it's almost like something's creeping and pushing it out.
Yeah, I think it's how you get into it from a young age. So I think what we could do in North Somerset is it can, in a positive way, it could be industrialized, so it could be commercialized from a business point of view. So only a couple of weeks ago, I was helping package honey in North Somerset near Wimpole, for a couple down there who, you know, they've got them a big beekeeping operation, and it's fantastic. Like something like that. I reckon I was the youngest person there at 25. Everyone else was over 50, 60s, or, you know, whatever. Like, you know, but why are there not kids there getting involved with something like that is beyond me. It's like, yeah, that's a great way to learn. And it's how you teach people that. I think through commerce is something I'm really keen on. I think local business and small businesses and that link to nature. So, you know, I think we need to be honest. You know, places like Clevedon Seafront, you know, walking group, you know, they can be commercialised. Tourism, like local tourism in North Somerset, is something I'm really keen on. Why do we need to fly halfway across the world, or even somewhere else in the UK, or miles away in the UK, when someone can come to Clevedon or Portishead for the weekend or a couple of days? There's so much to do, so much to see, and at the same time, you're doing your bit to protect the planet and, yeah, educating yourself again. So we're lucky. I think we should be. I think North Somerset should be more of a tourist destination. That's something which I'm quite keen on, actually, because not in terms of you know, people flocking in on holiday for the monetary experience, but for the natural experience. I think we're.
So would you back for example, and it's proposed and it's not got through on this Parliament, but would you back the idea, for instance, of a GCSE for nature?
100%. Yeah, it's fantastic. I studied geography at GCSE and A level and at university, and even within geography, there's not enough reference to the natural environment. My girlfriend did marine biology at university, and it's evident in her every minute you spend with someone like that, or people who have done something close to wildlife. They pick it up in their everyday movements. It's something which is a talking point for them, and I think that's great. Like, you know, why wouldn't you want to be like that? So yeah, for me, it's maybe not necessarily. It doesn't have to be through education, but just through scout groups, cub groups, but, you know, something like that. It just needs to be there in a more fulfilling role than it currently is.
But the weird thing is, Oscar, is that we live in an era where wildlife programs on the television have never been more popular. I mean, when we finish tonight, we'll be, you know, I'll be downstairs watching Springwatch. You know, you've got Attenborough, the national institution, global institution, I would say. The public's engagement with nature, I would argue, has probably never been higher, but it's an engagement through it's a virtual engagement.
Yeah.
It's translating that into an actual feet on ground doing something about it.
Yeah, and exactly that. Like I'm in Cornwall. I told you off air that I'm down in Cornwall for a couple of days, and we were walking on the coastline earlier, and we were looking at like limpets, clams. We are trying to find crabs in the rock pools. You know, looking at seaweed, eating seaweed, which is great. But you know, doing is the only way you're going to learn, really, from a young age. And I suppose we're going to have less parents we're going to have less families or parents who are engaged in nature, which is worrying. The next generation of parents maybe are going to be less closer to nature. But that's why I think, as a local government, so obviously we've got a lot of Greens on the council in North Somerset, and I know they're very, very keen to get some sort of scheme within to primary and secondary schools, which gets kids out of the classroom and seeing stuff in live action. And like you said, Jonathan, like, unfortunately, we do live in a society where you've got experts on everything online. We've got people who could tell you everything, and then you take them outside, and it's a whole different story. So I find that quite sad, actually. Like, it's, you know, people like watching something, and they say they know this, they know that. It's another thing actually putting it into practice, isn't it? So
are we actually
also, sorry, Chris, I'll quickly say as well that the cost of, you know, like National Trust, English heritage areas outdoors, you know, it's an expensive day out for a family. Like, it's probably going to cost you,
I
don't know, £20 for an adult, £10 for a child. You then got to buy your food. You've got to buy all of this. Like, it's not cheap, is it? Why can't we have maybe like on a couple of days a year we have? And I know that does exist, but why can't we?
You've touched on something very big there, and I actually got involved with quite an argument with forestry. Now, our forests have always been free at the point of access, and we as taxpayers pay for them. And what I got confronted with my family was the fact that the car parking fees had gone up on one of the forests that we go to, and I was offered £90 family membership.
Yeah.
I think I had to turn around to the guy and say, but I've already paid for it.
Yeah.
And how is that helping? How is that helping people get out into nature? It's not. It's putting them off. And so, I understand that they've got to maintain, for example, their car parks. They might have to put security cameras in and things like that. And let's be honest, if we talk about just one faction, that's forestry, they are already making money out of things like cafes, which are sprung up in forests. I've just had a note through my email about a rock concert which has gone on in the middle of the breeding season in the forest. That's making a heck of a lot of money, and so this on top and putting people off going because it costs money. And we've got to appeal to everybody. You're preaching to the converted here, because I used to be a trustee for a wildlife trust, and I was the only one on that trustees board each year that objected to a subscription rise. When finally, after 5 years, they turned around and said, "Why do you keep objecting?" And I said, "Simple, because we're leaving the people we really need behind."
Yeah, absolutely. And I think another point is that some of these areas of outstanding beauty or high areas of biodiversity, they're obviously quite isolated, so you have to travel by car, and that it can obviously cause issues for people, especially we'll probably touch on it a bit later on about what I want in North Somerset in terms of the use of the car and etc. But it is something which is definitely an obstacle. Where's the public transport getting you to these places? And if it is available, does it run on a Sunday? Is the last bus at 5 o'clock or 3 o'clock or whatever? Like there's lots of obstacles for why you can't have a family day out or a day out somewhere in the country. Trying to that everything's linked. Like, I genuinely believe a lot of stuff is linked.
Absolutely.
Especially
of course,
with wildlife. Yeah,
I was going to say, of course, the one you mentioned public transport, because one of the things we are still waiting for in Portishead is the train.
Oh god, yeah. Well, yeah. So, Jonathan, it's something which has been ongoing for like 20 to 25, 30 years even. And since moving back into the area, when I've been out in Portishead, it's almost beyond a joke now. People, when you talk to them about it, are either disinterested or don't think it's ever going to happen. My understanding of the situation is there's been elements of funding available. It's then gone away. There's been a block. Then we had the HS2 fiasco, obviously, which is like just made any regionalised rail project, was put every regionalised rail project on the back foot. So any funding or any idea of something happening in Portishead has been pushed for a long, long time. And I hate aggressive politics, but at the end of the day, there's only one person who's been there throughout the whole process. So you'd have to say with someone different within these meetings, pushing the railway, genuinely concerned with the railway, you'd have seen a different result. But with public transport in North Somerset, it's something which the Greens, we get attacked on all the time. They say, why do you hate the car driver? Why do you hate drivers? And my honest answer is I don't. We have to drive in North Somerset. People have to drive because of the geography of where we live. You have to use your car in most cases to get somewhere. But what we're trying to say is I want to change the mindset. So it's where you can ditch your car and use public transport. for that short journey under 10 minutes, under 15 minutes. And with our demographic of people of a certain age who will use their car for the shortest of journey, 5-minute car journey. And but it filters down. I hate it. It's not just people over 70 or 80 who are using their car. People my age are using their car to drive down to the shops, drive down to the gym, drive down to the leisure centre. And we need more openness, more visual signs and clues. You can ride your bike here, you can walk here, and we need more messaging, walk, cycle, especially in North Somerset. Like, what is the problem? Like Backwell Common, I don't know if you know it. Like, I'd often walk to Backwell through that way from where I live, rather than jumping in a car to get there. You know what I mean? Something as simple as that. And with buses, we've had a massive the £2 bus fare is brilliant. Like, it's one of the only positives from what the government have done in the last 6 months, 9 months, I can see. And they've maintained that £2 fare. The next step is ensuring that we actually have a lot of buses, and we've just signed up a new fleet of electric buses in North Somerset. But it's getting drivers to drive the buses. And when you're saying to a driver, you're going to earn £26,000 and I want you to work 10 hours a day, when it's not the most glamorous of jobs, we need to incentivize public transport. So you need more staff. More drivers equals more buses for us to use. So rather than one bus an hour, you've got 2 buses. Rather than a service running Monday to Friday, but not on a Saturday and a Sunday. It runs on a Saturday and Sunday. And Portishead, like you said, Jonathan, is it can be a nightmare getting from Portishead to somewhere with public transport. And for example, I've hated it for a long time that Portishead is almost not in North Somerset. Well, some people in Portishead feel like they're not part of North Somerset because they're so close to Bristol. And the majority of people in Portishead do use Bristol for work, for pleasure, whatever. And that's something I hate. I think they should be part of the discussion in Weston, because obviously Weston is so far from the Portishead. Sometimes I think people feel like they're forgotten about that. But you're absolutely right. The local issues, and it all again, it can link back to wildlife. So can I carry on? Is that okay? Do you mind?
Yeah, carry on.
Yeah, so the Epic development in Long Ashton. Do you know much about this?
No.
Oh, so it's a pharmaceutical company from America, and they're saying they want to build on the Greenbelt, for example, just outside Long Ashton. So it's going to be offices, housing, and it's causing a massive divide in terms of, is it a yes or is it a no from residents in Long Ashton? Because some people, when you see these developments on the Greenbelt, it brings in positives for local people. They're going to build this for us. They're going to bring in jobs, etc. But on the same time, where is our local MP or people within the community standing up for these local issues? And now it's in Backwell train station. We don't have a lift. We got given a ramp, but the ramp is so steep you can't get a wheelchair up it. And it's not actually good for people trying to get up it by foot if they've got a certain medical condition or a disability. So that funding was available. So public transport for a long time has been put on the back foot, and we are getting there, but it's just a case of trying to tell people we don't hate drivers. We're slowing down the roads because we care about children getting to school, walking about, being in the open. It's just about trying to change that mindset. That's the big thing for me.
I've just done quite a bit of work in doing my annual nest checking in Wales, and I came across virtually every village where 1 minute I'm doing 50 miles an hour and the next minute it's 20.
Yeah.
I tell you what, I've got to be honest, Oscar. At first, it is a right pain.
Well, I get that.
Yeah. But after about the second day, it's fine.
Yeah.
I got used to it. I acclimatized to it, and I got used to the fact that I could hear that part of my engine which was doing 20 miles an hour. So I didn't have to keep going, oh my god, am I doing 20?
Yeah. But that's it. It's the small changes. It's I think I completely understand that the council, which yes has got green councillors on, so the stuff down at Clevedon Seafront, for example, the changing of the car parking down the front. That's a massive talking point, and I completely understand why local people would be upset with something like that, because it is, in a way, it's a pedestrianised project where we want more people to use the seafront in the right way, rather than people turning up in a car, parking, sitting in their car, having a cup of tea, and then driving off. It's like, we want more people active with the Cleveland seafront, which is a great place, by the way. So for me, but something like that again is down to poor communication. So one of the main reasons why I see the Wild Portishead show, I'm like, yeah, why not go and talk? Because then you can actually get a message out there to people. Like,
you're talking to the right two people here, because I think, Jonathan, it's fair to say it's been a theme of ours about poor communications, but we won't go into that.
You have to talk.
That is the bone of contention is poor communications. Yeah, that's shall we say, I think it's fair to say, Chris, that's, I'm not going to say it's earned us our outspokenness about poor communication has earned us some black points, hasn't it?
Yeah, we get people in authority not talking to us anymore. That's by the by. Let's swap you on, because of course with the Green Party you're going to be very keen on climate issues, which, as far as I'm concerned, is still very much connected with that natural environment that we're talking about. So it'd be really good to try and tease out of you what climate initiatives you're thinking of locally, for example.
Yeah, so I'll go from national to local and sort of move it all together.
Yeah. So brilliant.
It's heavily publicised and talked about. For me, it's having the right sort of transition from fossil fuels to renewables, nuclear to renewables. And we've seen in Europe, other countries, in localised areas similar to North Somerset, where they've been almost the guinea pig for renewable energy. And nationally, it's not worked. And I'm very much one of the Green candidates who would say, yes, we want that overall switch to renewables, but it's something which is a transition over a period of time, rather than something which is accelerated where we might actually harm our own energy security worldwide, which is something which we're already, obviously, I would say our energy security already is very low, and it's in danger, but we don't want to harm ourselves even further by going to a fully switch to renewables and then leaving ourselves open to shortages. So for me, North Somerset plays a massive part of it. We use, currently in the UK, and in the Southwest as well, the number of golf courses, if my mind, there's a statistic, the number of golf courses takes up a higher percentage of land than both farmland and any site for energy generation. So for me, we look what America's gone through in the last sort of 5-6 months, or Biden's administration, and the massive investment in solar. And I would love to think we have suitable areas within North Somerset which could be solar farmland or available for solar generation. So why not turn every golf course in North Somerset? Not turn every. Sorry, why don't we use the land that golf courses have and invest in solar within the golf course, on the outbuildings within areas of the course? I think as a council, it's our job and the job of local people to identify sensible areas for solar. That's something I'd massively look to do if I ever had the power, because I think we have the green space, and if you get that connection between the benefits for people here and to that, and look at tidal. We're in terms of tidal energy, offshore wind, even inland energy, onshore wind. Sorry, there's so much potential in North Somerset, but it's finding suitable locations. I think that's really important, where it's land which we can all agree can be used for that purpose.
Oscar, why aren't we insisting then that every new build has solar panels? Why isn't that happening?
Well,
Is there-
yeah, it's
logical to just
Yeah.
say, and I can remember a politician called John Prescott actually talking about this. That's how long ago this was actually talked about. And I just wonder, is there a reason why they don't want to do that?
It's, to be honest with you, it's quite an easy answer, because a lot of the housing developers that I know of in the southwest cut corners, and it's about getting the housing out there as quick as possible, without thinking of the owner, the incoming family. So my job outside of politics, I work in energy efficiency. So we support people within fuel poverty, but we're also trying to help people who've got, the lucky people who've got 20 grand spare, who want to invest in solar, insulation, air source heat pumps. But what we're consistently seeing is that new builds are rushed. They're not always green. And often the person incoming has to do the work maybe 2 years down the line, which should have been done before. And housing is linked to this. And in North Somerset, we've seen lots and lots of new builds outside of towns and villages, which is interesting, because it obviously is building on the green belt, and it is affecting natural wildlife. I don't know how aware you guys probably are of the BNG, which has been introduced, to net diversity gain that every new build has to have. I think it's 10% of the wild. I think there's a figure which has to be met, has to affect less than 10% of the wildlife. So any new build in a green belt has to affect, which is actually promising and positive. And we'd love that figure to be larger than it is. But yeah, new builds need to do more. And for me as a green, I've been hit with this a lot. Why don't we build on the green belt then? Why don't you drive positive new homes that have solar, are going to benefit the tenants if they're renters? And I would love to see Taylor Wimpey, these sort of companies in North Somerset, build new housing, but make sure it's the right housing. Making sure it's not too big. It doesn't have to be a 5-bed, a 4-bed house, which takes up loads of natural land as well, where no one can afford it. No one in the local area can afford it unless they've got help. Why have we not got housing built for renters? Why have we not got social housing built? So there's loads of little things, but you're completely right. Not enough's done to make new properties green. Normally the work has to be done by companies like I work for, a charity that I work for, 2 years down the line. So, yeah.
It seems ridiculous, Oscar, that you wouldn't have houses built without guttering. You wouldn't have them built without drainage systems. So it should be part of, the planning, the planning law, that you build a house, you put solar panels in. Yeah. It shouldn't be optional. It should be mandatory.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. And it's when I've been out canvassing, for example, you talk to people about their solar, and they're so passionate about it, and they see that they're 5 years into having solar panels, and they go, "Oh, we're 5 years off having our getting our investment back." And a lot of people got electric vehicles now as well, which they use and they charge directly from their solar. So yeah, it's I think a lot of people are still confused about the benefits of having solar. I do struggle. I think some people struggle. There's a struggle there to get that message across to just your everyday person. But yeah, I completely agree with Jonathan that it hopefully maybe in 5-10 years time it would be a mandatory requirement on a new build, definitely. But I don't understand is the one thing that annoys me is the rush to get these new properties out. As soon as it's signed off, the one in Nailsea, the new building in Nailsea, the rugby club at the bottom, it's probably taken like half a year to get all of that done and people in. So there is a sense of rushing people into these new properties, and that's reflected in the quality of the housing. So it's not a surprise to me.
And you may have noticed something that Jonathan and I were talking about when we first sat down this evening. Isn't it blooming cold?
Yeah.
What's cold down there?
It's freezing. Yeah, it's been raining all day, and I think again, I mean, the Green Party, they announced a manifesto yesterday, and we've just announced that the 2050, which has obviously been net zero by 2050, which has been sort of the main sort of way of getting it across to the public. We've actually said we've gone back and said 2040, and getting to that is actually a lot of what we've talked about today. Insulating people's homes properly, you're not only saving them money, but you're also doing something to help the planet at the same time. Which is, we would have a nationwide insulation program. I would love a regionalised program. Where we work in Gloucestershire, we have a regionalised program where we're able to insulate people's homes with a government grant. Imagine if you had that available to everyone in the UK, it'd be amazing. There's no reason why not. We've got enough people out there who are qualified and understand how to deliver these things. But yeah, climate change. It's interesting because something closer to home, flying, the aviation industry in the UK, like in North Somerset, we also have Bristol Airport, and Bristol Airport is home to one of the highest percentages of internal flights in the UK. So people fly from Bristol to Newcastle, for example, which is one of the most popular routes we've got. And unfortunately, we have individuals still thinking it's okay to fly 3 times a week from Bristol to Newcastle and then back again. So a frequent flyer levy is something which I really, really think is massively important. And it's something, my personal passion, it's been one of my personal passions for a long time, is trying to invest in other transport, trying to get the right pricing for transport, the railway, coaches, the bus, in relation to how much a plane ticket costs you. So at the moment, a train to Edinburgh will cost you 120 quid or something.
Don't do it.
If you sit tight and wait, you can get a flight for 30 quid. So it's trying to have a scale which is actually sensible. And let's flip that round. How you do that is complicated. That frequent flyer levy is something I'd love to bring in. And then the aviation tax, and just a full stop no to airport expansion. That's something that's something, one of my most passionate sort of arguments of mine for a long time, since I was sort of 14, 15. It's beyond me why on earth it's even a conversation. We've got so many flyers and flights occurring every day. It's crazy.
We've had you on air now for over half an hour. What were you going to do? 15 minutes? Well done, Oscar.
Sorry about that.
Oscar, we are fingers crossed. As we said at the beginning, we have put out invites to other prospective parliamentary candidates for North Somerset. What would you like to ask them? What would be your question to them with regard to what you'd see as the priorities for the North Somerset area?
It's speak your mind, speak your opinion on natural issues. If you genuinely believe in something to do with our natural wildlife and the environment we live in, so flooding, for example, North Somerset is, it could be under massive risk of substantial flooding in 20 years' time. It has been historically. If you were to go back 200 years, we're underwater. We spend most of the year underwater.
Yep.
Knowsley, for example, where I'm from, the floodplains into Cleveland, it's crazy. So it isn't beyond the realms of possibility. In 10 years' time, we're going to have a massive issue with flooding, with the amount of rain I expect we will get over the next 10 years. But I'm just saying to people, you could say to me, I did an event with our MP, Liam Fox, a couple of months ago, and he had some brilliant ideas on green policy, but he'd never, ever come out and say that to his constituents in the media on a programme like this. There's too much. Unfortunately, we live in a society where people have their views given to them by their major party, and they'll stick with it. And unfortunately, at the moment, we've got 2 big parties who are not saying much on the environment, and not saying much on green policy, which is really sad. So I just say, forget about your part, not forget about your party, but forget about what they're saying and just speak your mind, because the people that you represent actually want to hear your comments and stuff like this. So yeah, for me, it's there's so much subject matter. I could probably talk for another 40 minutes, but it's trying to get people engaged with the natural environment in North Somerset, and that is linked to a lot of different things. So
what would you say? Because
hopefully you get some.
Yeah, we've remarked tonight on the fact that we're in the middle of June, and I think we're all contemplating putting the heating on tonight, which is ridiculous. But what would you say? This is a common thing that I hear from people who say, "Oh, we keep being told about if it's global warming, why is it so cold for June then?" Now, Chris and I and yourself will know the answer to this, but how would you explain to somebody that global warming doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to have blazing hot summers in the UK?
Well, exactly. So, and as you know, the change in temperatures we see from year to year. So, heat wave 2022, heat wave 2023, maybe one of the wettest summers we could see this year, wettest summer 2019 to 2020. It's a scientific approach which needs to be given to people from their education. Chris earlier mentioned about having a GCSE in the natural environment or in nature. What was it called, Chris? You gave it a word. Sorry.
GCSE in nature. That's it.
Yeah. So for once, Jonathan, it's getting rid of the old school teaching of climate change, using data, which is, I said at the start, I said looking at annual temperatures in certain areas of the world is enough to tell you there's something going on here. I won't go too much into, because this topic particularly is one which the Green Party have a particular messaging on, and I have a bit of a different messaging on. But I think it's evident that there's something going on here, and it's absolutely paramount that we get the right messaging across to young people and older people. Because if you turn on the TV, even people who work in meteorology or in weather, there is no messaging which suggests anything is odd.
It's interesting, Oscar, because if you look at I looked at the planetary map, the heat planetary map earlier, and Greenland, northern Norway, not southern Norway, northern Sweden, right up to the Arctic. In some of those places, they're actually basking up into the 20s. As soon as you move south, particularly on the line with the United Kingdom, it starts getting blue and cold. And you can see exactly what's going on. It's warming up in the wrong blasted places, and that's driving the cold air down south. And I mean, part of my job, what I do in nature conservation, is I actually study the effects of climate change on, for instance, nesting birds. I can give you an example from my garden this year. The insects have completely blasted well failed, and that's had a dramatic effect on great tits and blue tits, which have failed to produce any chicks at all due to the fact there's just nothing for them. And it's almost like, at the moment, within the past week, we've gone back to winter. The birds are actually trying to find artificial foods to keep themselves going, which is something that we would do in the wintertime. And I know, for example, the work I've done on the Somerset levels by looking at barn owl, the effect on barn owl chicks and extreme weather events. At the moment, things are pretty steady, but you just got this feeling that there's some big wet weather on the way, because the amount of food is starting to dry up. So it's all on the knife edge. And that I've been monitoring for over 30 years. And that crisis to crisis to crisis is happening all the time. And that, on top of habitat shrinkage, deprivation, is only exacerbating the decline of nature around us.
Yeah, absolutely. And you pointed out something there: the lack of a certain species, or the impact on a species, or an impact on an animal, which you said for
insects,
birds. It's it just needs to be documented for people to read about. And I don't think it is that. I don't think there's that transparency at all with the link between climate change and the natural world. Farming, for example, farming is massive in North Somerset, and local produce and what's in season at the right time. It's amazing when you look at you ask a farmer. A lot of farmers in North Somerset are actually very young. We're in a phase at the moment where you've got a lot of farmers in their 20s and their 30s who've taken over from their family, and you ask the guy at the head of the family, there's a farmer in Long Ashton I know, and he'll say, "Oh, we just can't grow this anymore because of the weather that we're having, or we're not able to grow this to the level and quality we could before, so we can't sell it to the shops, so they're losing money. It's massively affecting them, or because people are shipping in this produce of food or this type of food, it's beating off local food. So something for me which is really important is supporting local farmers, and buying their produce. And again, I don't necessarily agree in enforcing nationwide or national diets. I know that's something which has been a talking point in the past, where should we make people vegan? Should we make people vegetarian? Should we stop people eating meat? But simply, it's we need to support local produce massively. I think farmers are struggling at the moment. So that's just another point linked to that idea that weather is affecting how things are working.
We've got a comment here from viewer Stephen Rahn, who says 100% we need better education starting young in school and right through the education system. Everything is geared for business studies. And I would completely agree with Stephen there. I mean, when I was at school, a schooling 2 years ago, we had natural. I think it was called natural science or something. I know it's a Rush song, but it's we had people who taught you about the environment. They taught you about nature. They took you. We were learning about coastal erosion, stuff like that, and it was all practical, but it was all stuff that actually had some kind of meaning. It grounded us in the reality of what was going on around us. I don't think we've got that in the education system anymore.
I'll just say that as well.
The education system has a problem in itself, is that it hasn't got the time.
Yeah.
So you need to change the whole curriculum. I mean, if I go back to my primary school days, I mean, we always had every day the nature table. We brought things to the nature table to put on the nature table so that everybody could identify. In secondary school, we had rural studies where we actually got to grow our own stuff.
Yeah,
and
that's what we had.
Pollination and things like that. And if you look at the curriculum now, it's completely packed. And what teachers will say to me, we tried to, we were quite successful. We got a 19-part project going with primary schools, which was based around the curriculum, was the only way we could sell it. And that was based on bird behavior, identifying birds, adaptation, habitats. And I'm talking a few years ago now, but that was a highly successful project. But what the teachers were saying to us all the time is that we're up against the wall. We haven't got time.
Yeah, my first job after university was a geography teacher. So I taught geography about 1.5 years up in London, and it was amazing. But the biggest thing was I was so passionate about the subject, but unfortunately, the career progression. So kids and schools are so obsessed at the moment with where they're going to go. Like, what is the target after school? And there's no real incentive in green industry, unfortunately. I love my job. I love my job. I absolutely love it. And I've got friends who I don't think will mind me saying who do recruitment, sales, things like this. They're on ridiculous salaries. But you work in green energy. You work in a green job, a natural job. The pay, unfortunately, is going to be lower than other sectors.
Mm.
So how on earth do you inspire when you've got kids growing up to be economists, working the finance? I worked in a school with a heavily Asian population, and they were obsessed with working in the city. Like, it was all they wanted to do from the age of 15. So how, it's about telling people we need to pump money into these areas, because unfortunately you can do it for the love. I love doing my job because I help people and I spread the messaging about what doing the right thing for our planet can, how it helps everyone. But and unfortunately for some people that's not enough. People care about their salary, and it's something which is wrong. I think that's massively wrong. The sort of injustice in terms of a scale of what's rewarded. And in school, people grow up and there's a set list of what they want to do and what they want to be. And unfortunately, even as a geographer, hopefully I influenced some of the students I taught, but a lot of them were set in their ways of where they wanted to go, and it definitely wasn't the natural world, and it wasn't, unfortunately, into being a help in society.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's really concerning. Yeah.
We've got a comment from our friend Faith. Hello, Faith. She says, we need better public transport in North Somerset. Now, without boring everybody, I can definitely identify with that, because this time last year, I just come out of hospital after having 4 brain surgeries. Not 4 different brains, just 4 surgeries on the one brain. And I wasn't being greedy or anything. And yeah, I couldn't drive for 6 months. I was relying on public transport. Oh my goodness me. I used to use the bus before I learned to drive a few years ago. It was just a real eye opener to how poor the public transport is these days. It's, trying to catch buses everywhere. It just wasn't working, and it was dispiriting. It really was. I can absolutely identify with what Faith says there. We do need better public transport in North Somerset, and of course, one of the things we're still waiting for is our train into Bristol, which we mentioned earlier on in the show. So
Faith Trophy is completely right. It's I mentioned earlier with buses. Unfortunately, again, the group or the organisation that run buses in North Somerset First historically have dominated it. There's still a link with First. What I understand at the moment is we have the council trying to take more control of how our buses are operated, which is a good thing because they understand these issues of getting around by a bus. But the service, again, it comes back to how bus drivers are treated. I genuinely believe this. I've used buses all my life. I think if a bus driver is paid the correct amount of money, we have more drivers. We have a more pride in our buses, and I'm proud. I'm a proud advocate of a bus. And maybe Jonathan, I haven't had as many examples of waiting 25 minutes, 30 minutes for a bus, but I have waited an hour for a bus before. And you ask the driver, you'll say, "Why are we late?" And you won't get a response. There's no response. So it's a consultation, something I'd introduce immediately. I get every bus driver, I get everybody linked with public transport in North Somerset together and talk to them about what it is we're trying to achieve, because I do think it's a second thought. There's not a lot of care with our buses, and then we've got a train service which is too expensive. So using, like I said earlier, using a train to get into Bristol from Nailsea or Yatton is not cheap. We've got a Westlink service. I don't know if you're aware about this.
Mm-hmm.
The Westlink, which is sort of a brainchild to have a more in-close personal experience, which you can use for older people, any demographic, but it hasn't worked because, again, there's no care. The people operating this service are not putting everything in. You need people, not going to say myself, but people who care about public transport to be calling the shots, making sure everyone is on the same page. And we'll definitely see a better service. I'm sure of that. I think at the moment there's not that care.
Without kind of hijacking a show about wildlife to talk about public transport.
Can I just add on to that? Oscar, can you finish this one? Just to finish this subject off completely, do you think we've talked about trains and we've talked about buses? Do you think part of the answer is public ownership?
I think I think that there's definitely there's benefits of public ownership. For me, I don't know if that would be the best thing for North Somerset. I generally think with the resources we've got, we could do more in the current framework we have. I genuinely think with the right sort of direction and more support, it could be a lot better. I really do believe that. So I don't think we necessarily need public ownership to transform public transport at all.
I was just going to say, my experience last year was that we had a bus service running from Portishead into Weston-super-Mare, but it started off going straight down the motorway, but then first bus decided that it had to go through all the little narrow windy villages between Clevedon, Yatton, Congsbury, then on the A370. Then when it got to Weston-super-Mare, you're talking about double-deckers and single-decker buses, the big ones, snaking their way through all the little housing estates on the outskirts of Weston-super-Mare, roads that, estates that were not built for double-decker buses. And it was painful. And I'm thinking back to when I was, here we go. Viewer Bob says, Portishead to Weston is 82 bus stops, right? When I was at art college 40 odd years ago, I used to get the bus in, and it used to take just over about 40 minutes. We were straight down the motorway, straight down Locking Road, and this is a bus, not a coach. This is a bus. Yeah. It was a direct service. But anyway, that's not
common sense. Again, that it comes back to someone making the decision of the route who does not use buses. It is simple. Like, it's the people calling the shots here are not passionate about making public transport better than it is. And yes, the council have done a lot, but they can do a hell of a lot more. And me being an MP, which hopefully will happen in my lifetime at some point, wherever I am, would be communicating with a council, making sure it's better than it is, because there's too much kicking the can down the road with it, in my opinion. So you're all right there.
We've got less than 5 minutes to go now. Actually, we've got 4 minutes to go. So, Oscar, what would be your kind of pitch to the people of North Somerset then? Why should they vote for you at the general election?
The pitch is fairly simple. We've had an MP of 32 years who, on his day, is a very, very good local constituent. But I think his decline in interest in North Somerset is a concern. The amount of people that talk to me about how they've written a letter about housing, written a letter about natural environment, written a letter about the roads, potholes, services, banks, whatever it is, and he won't reply. So, or they won't get a response for 6 to 12 months, which is rubbish. Like, that is rubbish. You're an MP for your local area. You have to still have that basic understanding and do the job for your people. And you should be there for every issue that comes your way. We then have a Labour candidate who is not from North Somerset. He's the only candidate who's not from North Somerset, which I think is a concern. Like, we've all mentioned local issues on the show tonight, and I think that's a really, really worrying that we have someone who maybe doesn't have a full grasp of what people go through here. And we have a Labour government elect who are not as strong on green policy or social policy as I would like them to be. And when people are voting, they have to realise that you want someone who is straight talking, they know what they believe in, and they'll represent people from all different walks of life. And we have a number of people in North Somerset of working class and of people who are using food banks, who are struggling, and they're forgotten. I don't think I've heard a single media article, read a media article, or anything in the media about working class people. People have forgotten about that sort of sunken middle of people who are really struggling. So yeah, for me, I'm someone trying to represent the area as best I can. I'm a local person. I have moved away, but I've spent most of my life here, and I feel local issues outweigh national issues in North Somerset just because of the uniqueness of our constituency, and a lot of that is to do with the geography and the environment. Like, we live in a very, very unique part of the country, and and a lot of the issues we face here are local, because there's so many people in our constituency who unfortunately don't need politics. Politics doesn't matter to them because they've got enough money and enough support where any decision could take place and it won't influence their lives. But there's enough people where they need someone to vote for. But at the end of the day, I'll quickly mention, if I'm allowed, this idea of tactical voting is something which is doing my brains in. But, you know, again, don't follow national trends. Make a decision based on the candidates, not the national polls and whatever you're reading. Because I think, yes, we want someone out if someone wants someone out. I've been like that since I was 15. But make sure it's with the right person, because I think there is an argument to be had for that.
Chris,
and also, so I'll just say, really quickly, you know, the natural environment in North Somerset is massively important. So the Greens, I'd say, and myself are the only ones who've mentioned that anywhere near our literature. I mentioned in my literature in regards to flooding, because I really, really am passionate about that and see it as a massive threat to North Somerset going forward. And with housing developments, newts. I read something recently regarding newts and fisheries in North Somerset being under great threat from continuous housing plans. We've just had a new housing plan come in near Portishead, actually, and in Nailsea, which is near fisheries. So yeah, we're truly green. When we say we are green, we are green. When other people say they're green, they're not necessarily green. So that's what I say.
Chris, I'm afraid we are out of time. So we are going to have to do an extra show at some stage to talk about the owls and everything you sent me this evening. So I'm afraid we are out of time.
Yeah. You did an hour. Wow, you've done an hour, Oscar.
Yeah. Brilliant. Thank you for that, Oscar.
15 minutes, mate.
You could have cut me off. You guys could have cut me off at any point.
We'll do another show, Chris, and hopefully we'll do another show where we have, like I say, we sent invites out to the other candidates. So hopefully,
I can just add to that we are getting replies.
Excellent. That's what we want. Yeah. So on that note, Chris,
we'll do another show quick.
We'll do another show quick. Exactly. So until then, thank you to everybody for tuning in tonight. Thank you, Chris. And thank you, Oscar, for joining us. We do appreciate your time. Fingers crossed, folks. We'll be back for another live show very, very soon. So until then, enjoy yourselves and take care. Bye then.
Cheers. Bye.